Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Drop Balls and Big Calls. This week we have Jodie Hellings. Now, Jodie and I, our context is a bit different to the other guests that we've had so far in the respect that we actually work together for a company here in the home care industry in Australia. But what I've loved about Jodie is just hearing how she's reinvented herself, particularly in recent times where she's transitioned into in-home care after studying and taking a different path in her life following a series of health issues. It was a great chat, and I hope you find a lot of the gold nuggets that have been left throughout this episode. There's some great insights there on how to reinvent yourself. When you've reached those crossroads in your life that we all have. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Jodie, welcome to Drop Balls and Big Calls. How you going?
Good, thank you. How are you, Jace? Thanks for having me.
Not too bad. Pleasure to have you on. And you actually reached out to me to be on this podcast. What made you want to do this podcast today?
I think in many ways, obviously, I like you as a person and I have a lot of respect for you. And I think what you're trying to achieve is incredible by sharing people's stories so that they don't feel alone out there and feel like, potentially someone's been through something, if not the same, maybe similar. And I think in many ways there aren't enough people out there that put themselves out there and try and support others who are going through something similar to themselves. So that kind of, I think, resonated with me quite a lot.
Amazing, Jodie. It's actually amazing how many people feel that they don't have a story. And yet there's so many layers to each person's lives. That's probably been the most fascinating thing to me. It's just seeing that you put yourself forward for one, but how many people either don't feel comfortable doing that or just don't feel like they have enough of a story to tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's probably become more apparent to me over the last several years with the health journey I've been through, and where you do get support from, where you don't get support from, how you manage to come through that, and then eventually out the other side into something positive. So I guess if by sharing I can help someone, then that's a good thing.
Amen. So I've known you for a couple of years now. Our journey is a little bit unique in the respect that we both work together, albeit in different departments. So for context, we both work in the in-home care industry here in Australia, and Jodie is a case manager. This has been sort of a new journey for you in recent times, hasn't it?
Certainly has. So basically, if I go back to the beginning per se, after 9 years of being at home, having had my children, I worked for a psychologist for about 5 years as a practice manager. And through that journey, felt that there was a bit of something missing. I then had a health issue, which we'll go through that a bit later. And it was while I ended up quitting that job as a result of what I was going through at the time. And it was during the later part of my recovery that I made the decision that I actually wanted to be able to help people in life and not just be the person who sits there on the end of the phone, books appointments and structures staff and does all that sort of thing. I wanted to actually be able to make a difference.
What did the journey look like going from being an office manager to then getting into the in-home care industry?
In some ways the same, and in other ways different. I ran 2 practices, working for psychologists. They're an interesting bunch of people. Quite often have a lot of their own stories, even though they'll tell you they haven't. And, the work that they do is amazing. And particularly, obviously, I finished up just prior to COVID hitting, but I know they would have had an extremely busy last few years with helping people deal with what occurred there, being shut out of life and having to be alone so much of the time. To then, I guess, deciding that I wanted to do something with purpose. I wasn't quite 100% sure what that was, but I looked through a lot of the uni courses because obviously David, my husband, is very supportive and said, if this is what you want to do, now is kind of the time to do it. So he allowed me that opportunity to obviously step back away from work to be able to study full time. So I looked at a multitude of different courses that were free, because that was also part of the thing, was that I didn't have lots of money to be able to spend to be able to educate myself, and fell upon community services. And because I'd been through the health journey, a lot of the sections in that sort of, I guess, really resonated with me in being able to hopefully help others that go through a similar situation and be able to assist, guide them through. As a lot of people will know, with a condition that involves chronic pain, it's isolating, and just being able to centre myself back, I guess. And a lot of the subjects in community services sort of really stood out, and I thought they would be interesting. So when I started the course, that was the case. And sort of worked my way through that and had to do placement as part of the course. And I was very fortunate to find a placement with the company we work for. From there, I haven't looked back. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity I was given, and that the team there have seen obviously something in me and given me that opportunity to continue my career.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really cool. And it's no easy feat pivoting in your career. And it sounds like you had a really good opportunity there to go and do so, and a very supportive family there backing you to do that, which is great. How would you describe yourself to others? Who is Jodie Hellings?
Oh boy, probably first and foremost, empathetic. I love people, which is hence why I'm doing what I do now. I like to, and I guess that's where part of the course for me also learnt, and I learnt as an only child from a young age, where growing up through the 70s and 80s, you're seen and not heard. So you tend to listen and take a lot in, and not necessarily speak back. So I guess empathetic, loving, caring, sometimes funny. If I can get the right moment, I occasionally come out with a good funny one. And just, at this point in my life, I love my life. I've been through lots of different journeys over the years, through childhood and obviously, teenager and young adult, which I guess really has built the foundation of whom I've become.
Amazing. Good segue. Let's go back to those early foundations, Jodie. So tell us a bit about your upbringing. I believe your grandparents played a pivotal role in your upbringing. Your mum had you quite young, from what I understand.
Correct, yes. Mum had me at 17, and a lot of people, when I talk about that, because I say, I can vividly remember my mother's 21st. I was sitting up at the table as a 3-year-old. She was wearing cream pants with a velour orange jumper. There was a silver key with a purple bow. There was a cake on the table, which I think was white and also had purple and silver on it, which is quite, I think, for many, a bizarre thought. My grandparents were an incredible part of my childhood. I spent a lot of time with them.
Were you guys living at home with the grandparents in those early years?
In the early years, I was home with mum and dad, but did spend quite a lot of time at grandma and grandpa's as well. So I sort of was between both, I guess you'd say. But I absolutely adored my grandparents, especially my grandfather, who I affectionately called Gramps. He was the kind of grandfather that would kick the footy in the backyard with me, play cricket with me, sing songs with me, because his side of the family, he was one of 13 children. So they were all quite musical, play guitar. We used to have sing songs, so he'd get me singing. I believe there's a recording of me somewhere singing along with him playing guitar.
How good. You put that out in the open now. You're going to have to find it.
Which was about when I was 5 or 6 years old. He would often tell the funniest of little jokes and ditties and things that I actually today still share with my girls. And I guess that's where I have continued to keep him and my grandmother in their lives as they've grown up. Because, they were incredible.
So had your mum left school at this point? Was your dad similar age as well?
So I actually don't know who my real father is, but have had a dad in my life since I was about 3. He's quite a bit older than my mother. So I guess in many ways they were figuring out their early relationship life together. I grew up on 10 acres in the country, about 30, 40 k's out from Geelong. And so going to grandma and grandpa's was lots of fun because they were in the city. So I'd get to do city things rather than, being, because I was an only child. So being out in the country, quite often I would feel quite alone without siblings to sort of have time to spend with, or to, bounce things off, or, have a fight with mum and dad and there's no one really to talk to. So then coming into the city and spending time with grandma and grandpa was really good because, they would always be there for me and listen to me and encourage me and support me through those times where perhaps things weren't that fantastic at home.
So what did this time teach you about family and about resilience?
About family, definitely I have, in parenting my own children, gone to the values of my grandparents, always being there, always being open to listen, always supporting my girls no matter what they do in life. Even if they've taken wrong turns, it's like, that's okay. We can resolve that. We can do it this way instead, see if that works. I will always back them 110%. And make sure that, I give them the best that I can do. So that very much has been instilled in me from grandma and grandpa. Just always being there, not being judgmental, and not being supportive of your own children. Our kids are such a big part of our lives. You want your kids to, I guess, learn from you and build from you, to be able to instill in their children when they move forward, that I hope my girls will be able to say to their kids, your grandma taught me this, which was, something that she learnt from her grandparents. So I think bringing that part of it down the line has been quite important for me.
You mentioned fights with your mum and dad a couple of times, and obviously back and forth to your grandparents. Was your household with your mum and dad quite tense at times? What do you remember of the times you were at home?
Absolutely. There were periods where, mum wouldn't talk to me. We would have had a fight and you'd go a week or two without any words. And being at home, I could kind of escape it because I could go in my room, put my headphones on, listen to some music and just kind of take myself away from it. Or I'd go and jump on my horse and go for a ride. Dad, I think, often felt like he was the one stuck in the middle. And because he wasn't my biological father, I'm sure that made it exceptionally difficult for him to try and interfere per se. And we used to drive into Geelong Monday to Friday because I schooled in Geelong and mum worked in Geelong. And it's a very quiet, lonely drive when the person you're in the car to won't speak to you.
How do you reflect back on those times now as an adult?
I think similar to what I said before, it's drawing on how my grandparents behaved with me, how they supported me, the things that they would openly share with me. They would have fights and tiffs. Of course they would. They were married 50 odd years. And so there's going to be the odd time where they would fight, but they would generally take that fight away from me and not openly fight in front of me. Whereas I often felt when I was at home with mum and dad, if they started to have a fight, it would all involve around me. And then I would feel like I was being drawn because mum would be on this side and dad would be on that side, and I'd be the one stuck in the middle trying to deal with it all, which I felt was, looking back now, is quite unfair for a child. And I think that's where, David and I have always, not that we really fight, but, the occasional disagreement that we've had, we've tried to keep that well away from the girls because, it's not their issue. It's not their fault. They don't need to get involved, which I think was the one thing that I really struggled with as a kid, especially going through probably my teenage years through high school.
Yeah, tell us more about that. I was going to, because my next question was, my teenage years was when I probably started to get a bit of a vision on, okay, there's a bigger world out there. I just need to find a way to escape some of this and get to that. What were you dreaming about in your teenage years, and how were these environments impacting you day to day?
Now that I look back, at the time, it's always hard I guess, to kind of see what you're going through, and that, you're not necessarily different to your friend or someone in your classroom who can potentially be going through something quite similar. There was a period there, probably through years 9, 10, and 11, where I thought that mum and dad would split, and I didn't know how I felt about that. I felt like I was constantly being pulled in the middle, and I should side with this one for this reason and that one for that reason, and it was just it. I constantly felt uncomfortable and awkward. So I actually ended up, believe it or not, wagging a lot of classes where I just didn't want to be around anyone, because I didn't want to be around any more conflict. I reached that point where I just couldn't take it anymore. So I would actually go and hide out in a school library and just go and sit in one of the quiet rooms and just be away from everyone. So I guess I kind of withdrew quite a bit. Looking back on it now, yeah, it probably was a lot of anxiety and potentially a little bit of depression, as well as probably a bit of grief, not really knowing where, other than from grandma and grandpa, that stability was going to come from.
You mentioned before this chat that losing your grandparents in the same year was one of the toughest points in your life. When did this occur? Was this around the high school years, or was this a bit later on?
No, this was actually later on. I lost Gramps in June of 2015. So I was very fortunate. I had them around for, until I was in my 40s. And Grandma sadly left us 4 months later of the same year. So she passed away in the October. Really, really difficult time for me. Whilst I think did that initial grieving, a lot of that sort of heavy-centered grieving when you lose someone that is that close to you, I just pushed down and pushed down and pushed down and refused to acknowledge it, because I think I kind of went through a period where I felt that if I acknowledged it, I would completely fall apart. And I didn't want to do that. I felt extremely fortunate that my girls were, I think, 10 and 7 at the time. So they'd at least had, a good run knowing their great-grandparents, who I will say absolutely adored and doted on them both. There was nothing they could do wrong, even when they drove them absolutely nuts when we went to visit. They would take it all in their stride and, just be the beautiful humans that they were. But yeah, sadly, Mum put them into aged care. And I think essentially that was the beginning of the end. I wish back then I'd known about, in-home care and how that operates. I do often find myself wondering if we'd done something similar to that, whether, they might have lasted a bit longer. But by the same token, I'm also extremely grateful for everything they've ever done for me. And, I remember them daily. There's not a day that goes by that I don't reflect on something that they taught me. And, I always make sure that I share that with the girls.
A nice one. Thanks for sharing that. So, middle of high school, you're sort of withdrawing into yourself, hiding in the library. What were some of the, I guess, things that you were leaning on to pull you through some of those darker times?
We were lucky at the time. We had an amazing school counsellor who, obviously, through my teachers realising that I kept disappearing, she actually came and found me one day in the library and was like, come with me. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. But I actually didn't get into much trouble because I'd actually been working on schoolwork, but I'd just sort of withdrawn myself away from the class. And she was actually really supportive at the time and encouraged me to get Mum to come into school, which petrified me, because I thought that, I would just get into so much trouble for having done what I'd done. And so she was very supportive and sort of listened to me and listened to my perspective of how I was feeling. And I believe she then met with my parents to explain that to them. And she essentially ended up as being a little bit of a go-between, I guess, in getting my parents to see what I was going through, me to understand that, all couples go through this where, they can have massive fights and they threaten to split up and all of that. And, yes, sometimes they do split up and other times, they stay together. But she was incredible. She really supported me. And then right up until I finished year 12, she would often just seek me out in the hallway and, how you going? You all right? And, always sort of let me know that I had someone in the school that I could trust, that I could go to if I needed to, which was good.
Sounds like it made a significant impact on you.
She did. She did, absolutely. I think seeing what we've seen, not just with COVID, but, with a lot of families who go through, similar situations, I think it should be a benchmark for all schools to have someone like that who can be there, not just for, the parents, but also for the child who's suffering. And I think, yeah, she did have quite an impact on me because essentially for me, I had no one else. I'd pulled away from my friends. I'd kind of shut them out too. So yeah, she was that pivotal in helping me sort of refocus and get back into my studies properly, actually turn up to the classroom, get involved and, yeah, managed to get through and finish year 12. Uh, did okay in the end, which was good.
Well, that's amazing. And how did those conversations start to impact your relationship with your parents, but also the friends that you had at school?
Definitely helped with my friends because I had a couple of quite close friends at the time. And I said to this teacher that, I sort of wanted to, I guess, bring them into the fold so that maybe it would help them to understand why I'd been behaving the way I had and sort of, I guess, help them to assist me. And the funny thing I remember was one came from a very stable home, but the other girl who I was quite close to was actually going through something very similar. So in all me of pushing them away, she probably would have been one of my best allies, but she was fortunate, she had three other siblings. So she was sort of able to lean on them. Whereas, yeah, I think they understood why I'd withdrawn because I had no one else. It was me. So they were both really good when my teacher sort of pulled them in, and she did very similar thing to what she'd done with my parents. She'd sort of pulled them in first and had a little bit of a conversation with them and explained to them, I'd been withdrawing. This was the reason why, and I wanted to try and make things right to obviously rebuild the friendship and the trust. So yeah, she was an amazing teacher, and I'll be forever grateful. She reminded me a lot of my female version of my grandfather. She was just a really lovely, compassionate, empathetic lady who went out of her way to sort of really listen to you. And then, yeah, obviously provided the support and the tools that obviously I needed at the time that I didn't know I did to help get me out the other side and resettle with my friends and settle back at school and turn up to class and do all those things you're supposed to do instead of hiding in the library.
It's obviously a big turnaround to then get yourself up and complete year 12. What did life look like? The first steps out of school. What did life look like after that?
So the day after my last year 12 exams, I was in hospital having my wisdom teeth out. So there wasn't a lot of partying or stress release for me, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go to uni. At the time, I was very interested in the travel industry, which back in 1993 was booming. And so I actually ended up doing a private college year, doing business studies and a travel and tourism diploma. So that was intensive 12-month program. And then at the end of that 12 months, having grown up in Geelong, 1993, there were no jobs. I moved to Melbourne.
Big move to the big smoke.
Big move to the big smoke. And I've never looked back.
Amazing. And so you take your steps into the travel industry from there?
I did. I had my very first job at the Commonwealth Bank Travel Service, where I worked with an incredible team of people, some of whom I'm still friends with now. And they were probably the most supportive people that you could hope to have in your corner when you're first taking those steps out in the big wide world as a full-time, 19-year-old. They supported me, they encouraged me. We did lots of travel industry nights out together at what used to be called Bobby McGee's in the city. And they used to have an industry night, I think it was about once a month. So, we'd have lots of late nights and fun nights out and dinners and trips away and all sorts of things together. So they kind of, I think, became like my home away from home family. And yeah, I couldn't have asked for a more fun, incredible, supportive bunch to sort of take those first steps out with.
And was there travel involved in that role as well? Did you get to experience some of the world?
We actually were taken to Singapore. It was right back when the 747-400 Qantas planes had just come into the country. So a very long time ago. And we were actually guested up to the second floor of the plane in business class, which was incredible. Never experienced anything like that before in my life. So there was loads of drinking and eating and fun, and we got to sit in the cockpit with the pilot for a while, which was incredible. I remember just sitting in there and looking all around going, oh my God, how do you control all these buttons? Like there was just buttons all the way over this thing, and just going, wow, I don't know how you fly this thing, but thank you very much for getting us there safely. And I also did a trip to Central Australia, which was heaps of fun as well. Was part camping, part hotelling. And at the time, it was when they were starting to encourage people to not climb Ayers Rock. So myself and a few others decided that we would do the walk around the base of Ayers Rock. And it's probably one of the most incredible things I've ever done. Just seeing little waterfalls, Aboriginal paintings, little caves and coves. It was about 12 and a half kilometres all the way around the base, I think. It's stinking hot, red hot, dust, you name it. But it was a really almost surreal but beautiful experience.
So good. When you look back to this time now, it sounds like you'd gained quite a lot of confidence throughout this period. How do you reflect on that transition of leaving your childhood home, moving out from mum and dad's and on your own way into the city?
Best thing I ever did. I think leaving home was something that needed to happen for my own sanity, if nothing else. And just for the first time forever, really, just being able to be my own person, be myself, and re-find myself as a human. Being able to come and go as I please, being able to grow, find a career that I really enjoyed, and making new friends and doing fun things and not feeling like I was being looked over my shoulder at all the time. And yeah, just being able to be me.
Amazing. How long were you in that role for?
So I worked for Commonwealth Bank Travel for, I think it was just shy of 2 years. And then I worked for Australian Pacific Tours for another couple of years, which I really enjoyed. I had my 21st at APT, and I'll never forget that. My partner at the time sent 21 long stem roses, which I was highly embarrassed. And then on the back of those arriving, the staff all brought out a massive cake and sang happy birthday to me, and just really kind of made a fuss, which was really lovely because they knew obviously all my family were in Geelong. It was a work day, so I was at work. And again, it was like I'm moving into another family. That's the one thing I think, having worked in the travel industry, particularly back then, there were so many companies that always were working together, that you knew all your sales reps, you knew, all the different people that were out in the industry. We had these massive nights at Bobby McGee's where you'd get to catch up with everyone. And it was literally like a big family, probably an industry that I haven't experienced again since up until the last couple of years. But yeah, you could basically go anywhere in Melbourne City and bump into someone that you knew from one of the travel companies, or one of our providers of, coach tours and things like that. Because, yeah, it was huge back then,
Yeah, they
sadly.
seem to get quite intertwined, don't they?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. And a lot more back then than what it is now.
What made you pivot away from travel?
I pivoted away from travel, so I loved my role at APT. I ended up being the supervisor for inbound reservations. So I used to do all the bookings and coordination for people coming in from Germany, London and Canada, and coordinating their tours and the tour groups and booking hotels and doing all of that sort of thing, which I really loved. But the step for me, I think that was missing at the time, was that I really wanted to be a sales rep, and I wanted to, be able to go out and visit the people, because I'm a people person. That's me. And I tried to get that role on three different occasions and was rejected each time. So after the third time, I decided that I just wanted a change because obviously I wasn't going to get any further. I wasn't being given an opportunity. Didn't really at the time understand why. And it wasn't until I resigned that they sort of said to me, "Oh, well, we never gave you that position because you're so good doing what you're doing now," which part of me felt proud, but the other part of me felt really disappointed that that had never really been communicated as to why they were holding me in the position they were holding me in. Because I'm going for progression. I'm trying to improve myself and better myself, and couldn't obviously understand why they held me back until the end when I resigned, and then it was like, oh well, that's really nice, but now I'm leaving. So I left the travel industry and got into promotional merchandising. So all your little coffee cups and tea towels and T-shirts and jumpers and hats and caps and all those sorts of things. I started off in a PA role to a director of a business in Melbourne and worked for her for a couple of years, and then moved on to another company and actually finally became that sales rep that I had always sort of challenged myself and wanted to be, and loved it, and basically worked in that industry doing that right up until I met David and had the girls.
Amazing. What did those roles, because they're quite people-focused roles, you need to understand with travel-wise, what people are after, but with sales as well, like you got to understand what drives people, right? What did those roles, that sort of 8 to 10 year period, what did it teach you about people and about yourself?
Definitely not everyone's built the same. There are some people out there with very challenging personalities, but on the whole, sitting and listening to people and understanding what they want is half the battle of building a relationship or a rapport to be able to then build on a business relationship. It's, okay, you need XYZ for your promotion or your business or where you're going to travel to. And giving them that opportunity to speak and really listen to what they want, and then obviously being able to work with them to provide that. And I think from that, having worked in the travel industry, I think I really became myself and realized just how much I love being around people. As you know me, I'm a chatterbox. Don't mind a chat. And, I love to sort of listen to people and listen to their story. And, it's part of life now that follows me everywhere. And, sometimes you'll be able to offer support, or sometimes it's just, that shoulder to cry on. But just being able to support and be there for people is, I think, probably one of the main things that I discovered about myself that I think I've done fairly well at from that respect.
Now, all right, spill the beans. When did your husband come into the picture?
I was 28. He was 39. So there's an 11-year age gap. I had split up with an ex who I had discovered was cheating on me about 12 weeks out from our wedding.
No way.
Yeah.
So you were engaged?
Yes, I certainly was. And I had the family car and decided that, no, that's just not me anymore. I have to get rid of it. So I was shopping around for something a little bit more fun, found a little sporty kind of car that I liked. And one of the main reasons also that drew me to that dealership was that there was a female sales manager, which is very rare in the car industry. So being able to talk to female is a wonderful thing. And you don't feel that pressure of sleazy car salesman. And she was incredible to deal with. And David was actually the marketing manager for that dealership. And he had spotted me coming into the dealership to test drive the car. He then was chatting to the sales manager about who I was and whether I'd bought the car. Then after I had actually purchased the car, and I'd had it for about a week, I think, I got a call from Tracy to say, we're having some Friday night drinks. Would you like to come and join us? I said, oh, that'd be really lovely, because she knew that, I'd split up with my ex and whatnot. She knew, and I'd said to her, it was quite funny because I'd said to her, oh, just not interested in men at all. I just need to live life for a while and let my hair down, have some fun. And little did I know that I would meet David at these Friday night drinks, to which I learnt later down the track in our relationship that he never used to stay for Friday night drinks, but he stayed that Friday night because he knew I was coming.
Love it. So the aftercare was good from the car
aftercare
dealership.
Was excellent.
It was all a setup.
It was all a bit of a setup. Then, from after that, he rang me the following week and asked me out on a date. And as they say, the rest is history.
No calling about, putting tinted windows in the car, just, straight to...
No, just, let's go out. And I went, okay. Yeah, I think I'd suitably embarrassed myself by saying, thank God you're not a sleazy salesman, because the answer would definitely have been no. So I guess lucky for him, he was in marketing and and we hit it off pretty well. 23 and a half years later, we're still going strong.
Amazing. Before we go too far from that story of you being cheated on, no, I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I can imagine it must have been a significant whack for you, because you not only had a childhood home where, besides your grandparents, you weren't really wanted or didn't feel wanted in your childhood home, I can imagine at times, and now you've had this happen to you sort of a decade later. How do you reflect on that moment now?
I think in a lot of ways when that occurred, I felt anger. And in many ways, I think anger gave me the strength to be strong at the time, where I waved him off to work one morning and had the removalists parked around the corner. And as soon as he'd gone off to work, they came in, packed everything up that was mine out of the house and left. I was absolutely devastated. And having to cancel a wedding is one of the hardest things ever. Mm. We were going to get married in Williamstown on the water. It was going to be beautiful. So to have to undo all of that was really, really tough. But I think because I had something to be angry about, kind of kept me going until everything was done and I'd resettled into my new place. And it was then that I kind of fell apart a bit and kind of did what I usually do, became a little bit of a hermit crab yet again. And, I'd go off to work, I'd come home. I'd go off to work, I'd come home, and I wouldn't do a lot of socializing in between until one of my best friends at the time came and knocked on my door one night and said, right, get yourself changed out of your pajamas. We're going out to have coffee and cake. And
well, I'd be sold with that alone. Coffee and cake, I mean.
Yeah. And she was an incredible support, to which we're still friends now. My beautiful girlfriend Bindi, who now lives in Sydney. But she was instrumental during that time to, sort of snap me out of it and pull me out to get me back into the social scene with friends and, get myself back on my feet and slowly managed to rebuild and started then, going off to work, but then going out for dinner and then coming home rather than just going straight from home to work and home again kind of thing. So
it's fair to say without Bindi making that gesture for you, you wouldn't be going out for those drinks to meet your husband.
Yes, and all that coffee and cake. And, and that turned into, nights out and dinners out and out to the movies, off to concerts, all sorts of different things, mixing with other people within our friendship group, which grew and grew. And sort of, I then kind of found myself in a nice group of people and felt very supported. Once again, sort of encouraged to come out of myself and go, okay, well, you've been through that and that was really crap, but let's just, park that on the wayside and move on.
So you get married, and when does the family conversation start to happen? When did children start to come into the picture?
Story. So my eldest,
yes,
who also works with us at the moment,
who by the way looks exactly like you, like absolute dead ringer.
Thank you, poor girl. It's actually a bit of a surprise, Jace. She was completely unplanned, but an absolute blessing. I had an incredible textbook pregnancy with her, and David and I still quite often reminisce about when I was, 30 plus weeks pregnant, and she would kind of do this Mexican wave move across my stomach at night, which, we would just giggle and giggle because it would just seem so surreal and so weird at the same time. But going through that, I guess, nurturing another human to bring them into the world was just the all-time best thing for me. And, I'm very fortunate that Dave and I have very similar values. He had incredible parents and, I had incredible grandparents. So we've kind of pulled that upbringing from both of us to put into our kids. And so, we had very similar values on, how to bring them up, teach them manners right from a very, very early age, and just trying to always allow them the opportunity to grow whilst also letting them know that if they fell down, it would be okay because we'd be right there with them. And, we still do that to this day now. Tia, of course, is finishing her last year of uni. And Zali is in year 12 at high school. So they're both very much at that, again, finishing stage. And parts of me remembers just how tough that can be. David and I, with each and every exam, assignment and everything, just go, give it your best shot. As long as you do that, there's nothing more we can ask from you. And, whatever the outcome is, we'll help you sort it out. If it doesn't go your way, it's not the be all and end all. Neither of us went to university. So we're incredibly proud of Tia and all that she's achieved. And Zali has aspirations to go to university too, which is wonderful. But, if she didn't, that would be okay. It's not where, I guess, trying to be relaxed and supportive and allow them to be them, which is important to us.
You've said your husbands and your daughters and your fur babies, for that matter, as well. They're your constant support. What do they give you that keeps you grounded?
David is forever making me laugh, even after all this time. He has some wicked dad jokes, which he just will spring one out at a time where he'll say that, potentially I'm struggling or, I've had a bad day or something, and he'll just crack some weird random joke. Then I'll, find myself laughing. And, we very much celebrate the good things. So if the girls have had a win at school or, David's won a new client, there'll be cake in the house and we'll celebrate. It's very much, I think, for the four of us and the fur babies, supporting each other and being there for each other and encouraging each other, that when you've had a win, that's awesome. The next time may not go so well, but it might go even better. So it's, having, I guess, that little mini celebration along the way. And it's quite funny because Zali just had 3 quite difficult SATs last week. And we got to Saturday night and she said, can we get takeaway? Because I had a really hard week and I worked really hard and I've done my SATs and I think we should have takeaway. And David and I just looked at each other and smiled and went, yeah, absolutely. We sort of do those little mini celebrations along the way as well, which I think is good for all 4 of us. We're always in each other's corner. We've always got each other's backs and we know that we can rely on each other.
I love it. That's great. So I want to come to the chronic pain because that's been a significant part of your life for quite a while now. When did how'd that first start to show up in your life?
So I had just turned 44. The family had taken me out for dinner and we were walking down some concrete steps heading back to the car. And I felt this incredible shooting pain through my foot and up my leg. Looked at the step. There was absolutely nothing on it. So I hadn't stepped on anything or done anything. I hadn't twisted my foot. It was really bizarre. And almost instantly, I was at the point where I couldn't weight bear on my foot and it was quite painful. So that was a Saturday night, took myself off to the osteo on Monday and went, don't know what I've done, but oh my goodness. And, if I, strung my muscle out, what have I done? He scratched his head, couldn't figure it out. Went to the doctor. She sent me off for scans. They couldn't see anything in particular. But all the while, I'm still in this pain. About 4 weeks later, because I couldn't weight bear, I found myself with 2 7.5 centimetre DVTs in my left leg, which was the leg that I couldn't weight bear on, which was pretty scary. And still going through all this pain, still having more scans, then bring blood thinners into it. So, I can't cook dinner because I might chop a finger and then I'm going to bleed all over the place. And so that was my way of getting out of cooking. But it was just debilitating being in pain all the time and having no idea where it was coming from, why it was happening. It was really quite hard. And, I went off to see an orthopedic surgeon who I swear the first time he saw me thought I was lying. And I've told him that because he ended up actually operating on me a couple of months later. But it was, no one could explain this pain. No one could understand where it was coming from. And he eventually sent me off for one of those fancy radioactive MRIs. So you basically go have an MRI. They then inject you with radioactive material, send you away for 6 hours, bring you back, MRI you again. And it was finally from that we found a hotspot of osteoarthritis in my left midfoot, which was, they determined, the cause of all the pain. So from there, I then had a midfoot fusion done in the December. So I'd gone from July to December being in pain. Went, finally, I'm going to get somewhere. I'm going to have this operation. It's going to help and I'm going to get better and I can put it all behind me. So, and I'd been in a cam boot for a period during this as well, on and off, for a bit of support. And the day the operation comes, I was petrified because, I've seen on TV how brutal orthopedic surgeons can be. So I was fairly antsy the morning of, but I remember, being wheeled off in, waking up in recovery and going, my God, I'm in agony. But then part of me went, well, I know what orthopedic surgeons do in surgery, so, I'm sure it's probably just all to do with that. The nurse came over and said to me, are you in pain? Yes, I am. Oh, how would you rate it out of 10? And I went, at this point, probably a 12, which I think at the time shocked her a little bit. And I said to her, I just figured it was, normal part of the course post orthopedic surgery because I've never had it before. And then 24 hours later, they were continually, pumping me up with all the goodies and nothing was really working. And when I saw my orthopedic surgeon a couple of weeks later to get my stitches out, my foot was a completely different colour and I nearly passed out when he took out my stitches, which is very unlike me. I'm normally pretty brave and, as long as I can't see it, whatever you're doing, I don't care. But yeah, I was almost passing out, couldn't understand why. There was just this almost overbearing feeling of pain. He then said to me, let's just let it see how it goes for the next couple of weeks and see how it settles down. There'll be a lot of inflammation. Because the other thing, of course, I haven't mentioned is I'm type 1 diabetic. So things quite often will take longer to heal. So he just wanted me to calm down, take a little bit of time to try and let it heal and hopefully then, the pain would pass. Unfortunately, another couple of weeks passed by and I was still in just as much pain as I had been. I wasn't sleeping. I was reaching the point where any conversation with anyone, I was ending up quite emotional. I had lost my independence because I couldn't do anything for myself. I was just basically, a blob on the couch that couldn't move. And it was at that second after check with the surgeon that he mentioned to me that he thought I may have complex regional pain syndrome, which he then sent me off to a pain specialist and it was confirmed. So I then had this feeling of relief that I hadn't been making it all up in my head, that it was actually something and it was being caused by something. But I then had to obviously start the journey of how do we fix that? And that in itself has also been quite a lengthy journey. So initially it's try to calm that pain and bring it a bit more under control. I've had nerve blocks. I've had ketamine infusions. I don't recommend those to anyone because all it did was send me completely loopy.
Oh, so you went into the K-hole. Oh, no.
Yeah, not a lot of fun. That reached a point where, the room would be spinning. I'd be seeing people standing in doorways. It was, the most bizarre thing I think I've ever been through. But eventually he tried a spinal cord stimulator trial for me, and that finally worked. So basically, I had been 13 months in pain, and he put in this trial stim, and within 36 hours, I had no pain for the first time, which was a very bizarre feeling because you're almost then sitting there waiting for it and going, hang on a minute, where did it go? Because, I was laying on the bed at night. I couldn't have any sheets or blankets on me. I would toss and turn and toss and turn. I was so incredibly tired, so emotional, and then was eventually diagnosed with chronic anxiety and severe depression. So finally, at the end of all this, we had a solution. The only problem was because it was a trial, the surgeon had to take it out again, to which I was very cranky. And so then I kind of was back in that pain state fairly quickly after the trial came out. I then had to do, I think it was about 10 weeks worth of healing because the stim, when they put it in, actually rubs up against your spinal cord. So that all had to heal in order for the permanent one to go in. So I have now 3 spinal cord stimulators, one that runs right up beside my spine and one on either side, and with a battery pack in my lower back that charges it. Fortunately, and with incredible thanks to my pain specialist, have been living pain-free now for the last 3 years.
Amazing. And powered by ever-ready batteries.
Yes. Maybe that's why I'm such an Energizer bunny. I don't know.
How did this journey impact the way you see your body and your limits?
In many ways, it's surreal. I remember looking back now, being in those early stages of anxiety and depression and just feeling like I couldn't do it anymore. And there are many stages where David says to me that, he would go off to work and be quite concerned about what he would come home to find at the end of the day. So, not only was it having an effect on me, it was having massive effect on him as well. And I'm super thankful to him for being by my side and encouraging me and supporting me right through that. Because without him, I don't think I could have done it on my own. There are so many dark days before you get to that light at the end of the tunnel.
What did that look like? What pulled you through some of those darker times?
Definitely David, definitely my girls. They would go off to school and work, and I would have breakfast and lunch laid out on the kitchen bench for me so that I just had to make my way from one chair to another chair to be able to feed myself during the day. Having been so independent from a very young age, because I had to be, I really struggled having that taken away from me. And now when I look back, that's probably where that pivotal point of me spiraling downwards went. So it's definitely them, definitely my beautiful best friends, Beck and Rich, and their beautiful daughters. They would come and visit me every single week, right through the entire journey post-surgery, would take me to surgical appointments up in the city so David didn't have to take extra time off work. Having them all in my corner and encouraging me, supporting me, looking out for me is probably the drive that I needed, I guess, to pull myself out the other side.
Yeah, amazing.
And to them, I will be forever grateful.
So when you talk about resilience now, it's not just about survival. It's about pushing forward, and you've done that pretty consistently throughout your life and reinvented yourself a few times. How do you practice this daily now? What does it look like in a modern context for you?
So I am now on medication and probably will be for the rest of my life for anxiety and depression. Because going through that journey with the chronic pain, some of that stemmed from deep set grief, having lost my grandparents, the things I'd been through in childhood, which can have a very close relationship with chronic pain, as I've read multiple studies now. So medication certainly helps. Having my friends and family around me help. I've been back to school. I was dead fast that I was going to retrain and do something where I could use, I guess, strengths and lessons through my journey in order to be able to help others. And being a case manager to our beautiful elderly community, I thrive on that every day, being able to assist them with their needs and be able to help them to stay at home longer, out of aged care facilities, which I believe, having been down that road myself, I firmly believe, that in many ways they seem like the beginning of the end when you put loved ones into that situation. So, yeah, just being able to be around people, support people, empathise, listen to them, and allow them to feel heard is what I thrive on now.
If you could sit down with your younger self who felt unsupported and were in a really difficult time and you were scared at times as well, what would you say to her now?
Probably you're stronger than you think you are, and it's okay to allow yourself to grieve for what you've been through, and probably to encourage myself to do what I have done, and I guess to not allow all that sadness and grief and disappointment define who I am as a person.
Beautiful. I love it. If someone out there that's listening to this is stuck in their own pain and perhaps a toxic environment, whether it's at home or the workplace, what's the first step you think they could take to take charge of their life?
Find someone you can trust and talk to them. Whether that be a medical professional, a close family member, or even a friend. Just having that one person that you can go to, they'll be there for you, and likewise you'd be there for them if the situation was reversed. That person that has your back no matter what and unconditionally will be there to support you. Grasp onto that, because that is super, super special, and you don't get it with too many people.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jodie, home stretch. We're going to try something new for this episode. We're going to do a final five, and this final five is essentially some powerful questions that will help sum up your journey and the conversation that we've had today. So the first one is, what's one moment in your life where you feel like you truly dropped the ball, and what did it teach you about yourself?
Truly dropped the ball, going through chronic pain, and I think allowing myself to fall into the anxiety and depression to the point where I felt that I didn't want to be here anymore and I was a burden on everyone, and turning that around by not allowing it to define me and grasping onto those that I love dearly and asking them for help.
Love it. What's the biggest call you've ever made that changed your direction in work, family, or life?
Moving from Geelong to Melbourne was the best thing I could have ever done for myself. As much as I missed my grandparents terribly, just getting out of Geelong, because Geelong is smallish, but I knew a lot of people, and there was a lot of, I guess, bad space, bad memories. So picking myself up and moving to Melbourne, starting fresh.
How's your perspective with Geelong these days? The reason I ask that is because I grew up in a suburb called Hornby, and my, I guess, memories and associations with that suburb, with the school and a lot of other things in that area were really negative for many years, to the point where I'd refuse to even go there anymore when I'd go back home to New Zealand. Even now, I still feel uncomfortable when the name of the suburb's even mentioned. But how's your relationship with Geelong?
Haven't been there in 10 years.
There you go. So pretty similar.
Yeah. And in all honesty, I don't think I would voluntarily, because the last time I left there was the day after I'd buried my grandma, and there's been no desire or willingness to go back since. Haven't spoken to my parents since that time either. Either way, no one's reached out to anyone. So, yeah, for me, no, I'm happy in life. I'm settled with my family. I've got beautiful friends. I've got amazing work friends, and that's what I now focus on day to day.
When life's knocked you down, what's been your go-to move for getting back on your feet? I think you've probably covered this a couple of times already, but it sounds like community's the key theme throughout that.
And music. Yeah. It used to be sport, but unfortunately now my body doesn't quite allow me to go down that road. Played a lot of sport as a youngster, which I think was good for me. But, now I'll just get out and go for a walk or get on, during summer, jump on the paddleboard, go for a paddle. And yeah, just having family and friends around me who I know have my back and equally they know I have theirs.
Looking back, is there a moment where a different choice could have taken you somewhere completely different?
That's a tough one.
A sliding doors moment, so to speak.
Yes. Well, probably failed engagements, I guess fleeting thought over the years, I wonder what would have happened had that all gone ahead. Would I still be married to that person? Would we be divorced? Would there be kids? Would there, how would life have been had it gone down that road? But then I immediately have the thought of, thank God it didn't, because I would never have met David.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I think there'd be a lot of people that have had to consider that very question of, what do I do in this circumstance?
Yeah. And it is really confronting when it's happening and there's confusion and there's anger and there's disappointment and there's all those things, what did I do wrong? What should I have done to make it better? And I think a lot of those questions where I have questioned myself like that over the years is also the questions that I feel I had to answer when I was younger. So I've probably at times been particularly critical of myself. Whereas now I think I've reached that point with the love and support of my family where I can go, you know what? Shit happens and that's okay. It's how you pick yourself up and bring yourself forward is what matters at the end of the day.
Well, that is all the questions I have for you, Jodie. I think it's been a great chat. I haven't been on my best form today, but I think your conversation has resonated with me a lot, and I'm sure it will many others. And yeah, I think my perspective of you, you're a very warm and engaging individual that genuinely cares for others. You see that. I get to see that luckily every day in the work that you do. And you can tell by how you talk about your family and your friends, what they all mean to you as well. And I'm sure it's reciprocated. So yeah, thank you so much again for doing this. And it's been awesome having you on.
Thank you so much for having me and for giving me the opportunity and for everything that you're doing. You are amazing, my friend.
That was Jodie Hellings. Thank you so much for listening all the way through to the end. If you are still listening, please like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. It helps more than you know. And we have a long-term vision for this podcast that I think you're going to love. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.